What is the image of Los Angeles? What makes deciphering its image so complicated? Is it as difficult as navigating its labyrinthian highways, its Gordian knot of city planning, this sprawling, decentralized, and gargantuan scale of development? Furthermore, in making sense of film noir about Los Angeles, or perhaps making sense of Los Angeles in film noir, where do we place the City of Angels in the modern day? What is this bright, guilty place, as Orson Welles once called it? The dream factory, the mitochondria of American entertainment. In a city that's changed vastly from year to year, becoming something virtually new decade by decade, the noir genre and its filmmaking tradition have permeated throughout LA. The genre involves a long, storied history that runs parallel to the development of both Los Angeles and America itself. Los Angeles was the noir genre's biggest target, but also its home. LA historian Mike Davis places the emotional weight of noir firmly in the disillusioned, depression-crazed middle class, anguished by the corrupt institutions the 1930s hard-boiled detective fiction had uncovered. Noir became a sort of ideological outlet for an American middle class that felt zero class pride, but also no revolutionary consciousness. In addition to Davis's Marxist reading of noir's biting relevance, the genre was also shaped by a psychological interiority via psychoanalysis. Nowhere was this more evident than in Los Angeles noir fiction, which, continuing the legacy of German expressionist film, mapped the city's psychogeographic terrain, where urban space reflected both social tensions and inner turmoil. Urbanity is central to Los Angeles noir in the same way that urbanity is central to Los Angeles itself. What this project aims to do is take a retrospective look at Los Angeles noir, or the populist anti-myth of Los Angeles, once more using Davis's verbiage. The independent project aims to interrogate the question of noir in Los Angeles of today. I ask, how do we make sense of LA noir today? Do noir's critiques of LA carry even more truth than they once did? And with this in mind, we come back to our central question. What is the image of Los Angeles? Perhaps the answer illuminates something about the experience of late capitalism today. To explore this question, we'll look at the locations throughout Los Angeles where film noir has been shot, settings that exist as both fiction and reality. Through this, we delve into a cinematic, hard-boiled portrait of Los Angeles painted by the city and its many critics. This interrogation into the psychogeography of LA is divided into the layers of the city, inspired by noir-inflected psychoanalysis. We start at the Pacific, which is LA's front-facing exterior and amid natural beauty. From there, we go to El Pueblo, the core of the city, where the majority of the selected shooting locations reside in. Finally, we conclude with the id of Los Angeles, the inner psyche of this sprawling metropolis, the empire inland. So come with me today to dive into the noir history of Los Angeles as we clear the smog. We arrive at the coastline, where such immutable beauty lies. The iconic Malibu beach house at the end of Robert Aldridge's 1955 film Kiss Me Deadly is perhaps where we'll start our journey through LA Noir. The noir's apocalyptic atomic atmosphere comes to some sort of harmonious collaboration with the Eden that is the Pacific coastline, a sort of refuge from the urban sprawl of Los Angeles. Houses line this very coastline today, just as they did at the time of the filming. Some of America's most sought after, most expensive real estate hugs the hills lining this beautiful coast. Multi-million dollar Spanish colonial revival homes, a style found all over Santa Barbara, reflect the bourgeois taste of those who live on LA's exterior and remind us of LA's role as a founder of real estate capitalism, a city whose value rose out of hypercharged speculation. The beach functions as a sort of symbolic facade, an entrance to LA that leads you to believe in the Southern California oasis. For a genre like noir, the beach affords the protagonist, maybe by extension the audience, the geographic isolation that contrasts with the noise and corruption of inner-city life. Just as Paul Thomas Anderson's 2014 film Inherent Vice, one of our most recent examples of LA noir, starts the film at Detective Doc Sportello's Gordita Beach, itself an imitation of Manhattan Beach home. I start this exploration by ruminating on how the beach functions today. For much of West LA, places like Venice Beach function, as a friend of mine who lives in Southern California once observed, like the Times Square of LA. Instead of the crowded mound of neon-drenched urbanity, Venice Beach stands in instant contrast, like much of LA to New York, by its space. Although it shares the same kitschy vulgarities adorned on novelty tourist stores, and features a distinct flair from SoCal skating culture, in addition to its palm trees that are a part of its natural identity. Though Orson Welles' 1958 film Touch of Evil entered the Venice Beach streets into the LA noir canon, the beach of today might be the least changed by the 70 years since its release. It is minimally touched by the changes to our world today. Despite the rampant tourism that characterizes late capitalism, Venice Beach is just that, a beach. Perhaps this simple form-function equivalence is why noir finds so much solace in the beach. However, much of noir has to do with urbanity, the city, a center of dark corners and late nights, which takes us to the core of LA in our next section, El Pueblo. Much of film noir's relationship with the urban core takes place in interiors, in seedy corners and velvet red booths. Our first stop is at the Prince Restaurant, an old-school bar and restaurant in Koreatown, the interior of which you can see in a crucial scene from Roman Polanski's 1974 neo-noir Chinatown, a film that also interrogates the psychogeography of Los Angeles.
Look, you sue me, your husband dies, you drop the lawsuit like a hot potato, all of it quicker than the wind from a duck's ass. Excuse me.
The Prince Restaurant of today serves Korean-style fried chicken and garners a wide assortment of customers throughout the day. In fact, the restaurant has been a shooting location for many things, including shows like New Girl and Mad Men. Its anachronistic yet tasteful interior allows for something outside of time. For Chinatown, the booths are perfect for evoking some sort of nostalgia. Of course, a nostalgia with a cynical flair toward an older, more glorious LA. This LA, as the film suggests, is at best cheap and gilded. Like most neo-noir films shot and set in LA, at the center of Chinatown is a scathing indictment against the hegemony of capital and state violence. Perhaps this critique is diluted when the prince goes from a movie set back to a business that needs constant consumption to survive. A similar phenomenon occurs when we head to the Formosa restaurant, a 100-year-old restaurant in West Hollywood, where LA Confidential was shot.
Want an autograph? Write to MGM.
Since when do two-bit hoods and hookers give out autographs?
Just say to me.
LAPD.
Mike Davis ruminates on something similar when discussing Thomas Pynchon's 1990 novel Vineland, a vision of the Disneyification of noir, a future where noir is repackaged into atmosphere, where film noir allowed its audiences to transport to an older time. It confronted them with a deeply violent and corrupt Los Angeles. The interiors of both the Prince and Formosa allow consumers to engage in a commercially mediated simulacra of film noir. This is not to say that the Formosa is reducible to pastiche. Its century-long history has attracted figures from Humphrey Bogart to Clark Gable, a legacy on display in the many photos of movie stars that line its walls. Interestingly, when the restaurant attempted to modernize in 2015 by replacing its original red and black 1940s interiors, negative reactions prompted a reconstruction of much of the old design. The persistence of these interiors speaks to the ongoing allure of noir nostalgia. Noir functions today not simply as a critique, but as a commodity in its own right. We now go to Echo Park Lake, where another conversational scene in Chinatown takes place. The Echo Park of the 1970s, when Chinatown was filmed, was obviously much different from the neighborhood today. Over the following decades, the area underwent significant demographic and cultural shifts, with a large number of Latino and Asian immigrants moving in during the 1980s and 1990s, reshaping its character into a working-class immigrant community. Beginning in the 2010s, Echo Park became a flashpoint for gentrification, as rising rents and redevelopment gave way to artisanal coffee shops, pop-up boutiques, and organic grocery marts. In many ways, these transformations mirror the broader changes in Los Angeles' urban core, where neighborhoods once defined by immigrant working-class identities become sites of consumption and lifestyle branding. The lake itself is enjoyed by tourist, native, and transplant alike. Going further into the city, we reach the Bradbury Building, a 5-story office building dating back to 1893. Its ornate and extraordinary interior has appeared in countless shoots, including music and television, as well as Ridley Scott's 1982 sci-fi neo-noir Blade Runner. This movie, perhaps the only film noir of the future, reconfigures the Bradbury Building into something ghostly, an artifact suspended between future and past. Walking through its halls today, that same sensation lingers. The building is at once historic and strangely timeless, the city's oldest landmarked structure. Yet, stepping outside, the contrast is immediate. Nestled between a Blue Bottle coffee and a trendy bagel shop, the Bradbury's atmosphere of another era, now past, collides with the glossy modern center of downtown Los Angeles. That juxtaposition leads us naturally to one of noir's most iconic landscapes, Bunker Hill. Bunker Hill, once a distinct topographical rise that separated the Victorian-era downtown from LA's western sector, has undergone some of the city's most dramatic transformations. Over the course of the 20th century, waves of redevelopment erased Bunker Hill's distinguishing architectural trademarks and replaced them with gleaming postmodern skyscrapers. The neighborhood that once served as noir's most familiar playground is now unrecognizable. In fact, when Curtis Hanson made LA Confidential, he had to recreate Bunker Hill elsewhere, since little remained of its original streetscape. The hill had once been home to countless noir locations, from Kiss Me Deadly to Crisscross to Angel's Flight. One of these noir landmarks, Angel's Flight Railway, appears in Kiss Me Deadly. Amid Bunker Hill's comprehensive redevelopment, which transformed downtown LA, the railway has been dismantled, refurbished, and relocated multiple times. However, it endures as a living, albeit touristic, vestige of the old neighborhood, a theme that seems to be common throughout our noir landmark journey. The short ride takes passengers just 96 feet up the hill, a reminder of Bunker Hill's trademark topography. Once at the top of the railway, we are greeted once again with the Bunker Hill of 2025. Today, public landmarks such as the Walt Disney Concert Hall and the Broad Art Museum define the skyline of downtown LA. Frank Gehry's postmodern metallic undulating building stands in sharp contrast to the nostalgic presence of Angel's Flight, though the railway continues to serve commuters traveling between Bunker Hill and the downtown core. However, film noir never fixed itself on LA's urban centers. In fact, the public spaces of modernity were just as important in noir as the sleazy interiors of upper-class domestic life. Noir's critique of privilege and corruption takes us, finally, to the hilly homes of Los Angeles' upper class. Mike Davis argued that much of noir retained a character of existentialized Marxism, which would explain LA film noir's fascination with the corruption and malaise of the bourgeoisie. Two films in particular stand out, one that helped define noir, and another that later satirized it. The Spanish colonial revival house from Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity remains almost unchanged, its architecture still reflecting the taste of the Southern California elite. Although what has changed is less visible, the astronomical rise in real estate values surrounding it.
Feliz Boulevard, so I drove over there. It was one of those California Spanish houses everyone was nuts about 10 or 15 years ago. This one must have cost somebody about $30,000.
In addition, the High Tower, featured in Robert Altman's 1973 satirical neo-noir The Long Goodbye, rises above the elegant homes of Hollywood Heights. Altman begins the film near the tower, with Raymond Chandler's iconic detective Philip Marlowe awakening in his apartment beside it.
Thanks. Mr. Marlowe, I'll save you a brownie.
Thanks a lot, but they hurt my teeth.
For Altman, this setting framed his critique of Chandler's world, a satirical noir that exposes the violent world Chandler only partially explored. His film is self-aware, conscious of noir's conventions, even as it subverts them. Perhaps this is the perfect landmark to end on. The tower still stands and functions today, a symbol of both the topography and class supremacy enjoyed by the neighborhood's bourgeois residents. Overlooking the city, Marlowe appears less like a man of action than a specter from another era, a neutral observer drifting through the lives of a self-absorbed and violent elite. Whether Altman's portrait of Los Angeles' upper class remains accurate today is certainly debatable. What is undeniable, however, is the astronomical cost of living hidden behind its unchanged facade. Late capitalism may feel like a new force, but the divide between those who hold wealth and those who do not is a story at least as old as noir itself. What lies in the dark inland of Los Angeles? The id of noir's home base. What can we learn by comparing the images forever preserved on film with the city that remains? What is certain is that LA continues to be a center of commerce, culture, and consumption. The landmarks that survive do so at least partially by packaging and selling the very film histories that once defined them. Noir offers a particularly striking lens on this city, reminding us that its critiques of corruption, greed, and violence are not simply ghosts of the past, but echoes that still reverberate today. LA may appear unrecognizable to the figures of classic noir, yet its contradictions remain familiar. faced with exorbitant grocery prices or the sprawl of its endless highways. One wonders what Philip Marlowe would make of an Erewhon market or a boutique in Echo Park. As Mike Davis argues, Los Angeles has long embodied the logic of late capitalism, which leaves us to ask where we go from here. Does LA Noir help us build towards a better world and out of our modern malaise, or are we in too deep, complicit, and ready to run away from the truth? Perhaps when we dig ourselves into one answer, the waves wash us back to the shore of confusion. Returning to our earlier chapter, we end not in the hills or towers, but on the beaches of the Pacific coast, on sands that, for now, have not yet been swept away to make room for a new highway or another oceanside cafe. Like the tides below the California sun, we are pushed endlessly back and forth between clarity and contradiction. Even as the city reinvents itself, the patterns exposed by noir, of who holds power, of who is excluded, of how the city changes, remain unmistakably visible, like the setting sun or the rising tide, all reminders the smog of modern life may never fully clear.